Guys, I wanted to do a video on the Frank Warren card in general. Now I started off the night, I did a video on the Vijender Singh fight. I kind of was thinking I'd do a video on each fight as and when it happened, but kind of didn't have the energy to do that throughout the course of the night. So yeah, I started off with that one. There's a separate video on the Vijender Singh fight. There's also a video that I did in the main event, which was Hughie Fury versus Fred Cassie. But I really enjoyed the card on the whole. Granted, the main event, Hughie versus Fred Cassie, was a bit of a letdown. Didn't really catch fire. And as I said, I did do a separate video on that. So if you want to hear a full breakdown on that fight, please check out the video on my channel featuring that fight. But that aside, this was a really, really good night of boxing. And for me, it was a credit to Box Nation and a credit to Frank Warren, actually. And if you are a real hardcore boxing fan, there was something on this card for you tonight. I appreciate that it didn't have the high vis production value of a Sky card. I appreciate it didn't have the celebrity name of an Anthony Joshua or a George Groves or a Chris Eubank Jr. But there was some real boxing talent and some real skills on display tonight. And I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the fights and a little bit about some of the talent in that Frank Warren stable. You know, there's real strength in depth. There's a lot of good prospects coming through, and there's a number of fighters in that stable I could see hitting British level in 2017, and who knows, maybe European and world level in 2018, 2019. There's some real strength in depth there. Let me start by talking about a fight that I think has to be by far the favourite for Fight of the Year 2016, which was Conlan versus Nelson. And it's rare to see a fight at super flyweight even televised. But this fight was spectacular from the first round till the finish. I believe both guys were knocked down twice, although there were so many knockdowns in the fight, it was kind of slightly hard to keep track of who was knocking down too. But in the start of the fight, Conlan looked to be the superior fighter. He seemed to be landing the more eye-catching shots. He seemed to have the power to change the course of the event, and he went all out. He was hurting Nelson. He was fighting with high output. He was putting on a barrage. Nelson had one of the biggest hearts you'll ever see in a super flyweight, let me tell you. The guy was super fit, super determined, and he had a real set of balls, and he kept coming. He kept pushing the action. It was incredible how able to recover he was. And, you know, he was backing Conlan up, pushing him around the ring, beating him with the jab, and, you know, grinding him out. And Conlan was in all sorts of bother. In the 7th round, Nelson drops Conlan hard. Conlan did well to get up. I think that was the second time in the fight Conlan had been down. And, you know, Nelson was all over him. There were times in this fight I thought both men were going to get stopped on multiple occasions. In the 7th round, I thought Conlan was out of there. I thought Nelson was going to stop him. And sure enough, you know, Conlan comes back in the 8th. As Nelson's attacking, Conlan picks a hook to the body from the gods, you know, a sort of amazing one punch, and folds Nelson in half, drops him, and stops him with one of the best body punches you're likely to see. It was a tremendous fight. It was all action every minute of all the rounds. Both guys showed tremendous heart. You know, the output was there, the power was there. It was a really, really, really great fight. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and if you haven't seen it, I advise you to try and find a way of checking it out. It was a real Fight of the Year candidate. I'm sure when I'm looking back at 2016 at the end of the year, I'm going to be mentioning that fight again. You know, Conlan, for me, very impressive to stay in the fight. He clearly carries power. He's got some excellent offensive punches. For me, people were talking on my Twitter about him fighting Caliafy, about him fighting Paul Butler, even about him fighting Zolani Tete. I don't think he does well against any of those guys. I really don't. For me, he lacks the defensive fundamentals. He lacks the jab. You know, he couldn't keep Nelson off him. This was a guy here who had Only 2 KOs on his record, and he was hurting Conlan badly. Conlan's lack of defence, his lack of a jab, is going to hurt him at the top level. However, up to that point, he's been involved in very, very entertaining fights. I just don't think he's got it in the locker to live without a Paul Butler EFI, let alone a world-class fighter like Tete. Both of the Walsh Brothers won on the card in impressive fashion by knockout. Both of them look really, really good. They're slick, awkward fighters. Liam Walsh in particular is a guy I think is absolutely world-class. Just been discussing this with my good friend Ingram Jones from Bay Lorick via Twitter, and we both agree. Liam Walsh is a world-class fighter, and I kind of think Frank Warren needs to really do more and push him forward. We've seen Liam Walsh hanging around the peripheries of British title, Commonwealth title for a long, long time now. Feels like he's been at that level for ages, and I really want to see him have a crack at world title level. Some of his skills, some of his elusiveness, the way he puts punches together. This guy truly is world class. He's got, he really is a well-rounded fighter, and for me, this guy is probably the best super featherweight in Britain. Certainly pick him over Stephen Smith at the minute. Let's put it that way. There's a long way to go for Liam Walsh. I just think he needs a real push and needs some momentum in his career. Rowan Walsh, it's a bit of a... If you talk about boxing brothers, for me, these two are more exciting, more interesting fighters than Jamie McDonnell and Gavin McDonnell. But there's a little bit of the sort of Gavin McDonnell effect with Ryan Walsh in that he probably isn't as exciting a fighter as his brother Liam. He doesn't seem to quite have that upside, but some of the punches he was landing today, those lead hooks, some of the stuff he was doing in there against Tennyson was really advanced as well. And this is a guy who I think has one more fight to keep hold of his British title. He should do that. And then he should definitely look to try and move up to European level at least. There's some real talent there, and those boys deserve a push. Those guys are real diamonds in the rough, and they've got a lot of skill and a lot to offer. For me, both of them are above British level actually, and I'd just like to see them get a bit more momentum in his career, in their careers at that point. Those were the main fights. We've discussed Hughie Fury and Vijinda Singh in a separate video. The Conlan fight was superb. Good performances from both Liam and Ryan Walsh. Let's talk about the prospects briefly. I didn't see the Anthony Yarde fight live, but I got a very strong recommendation from my good friend Ultratech Sports via Twitter. So I was able to find a fight on YouTube, and Anthony Yarde does look very, very good. I believe he's 5-0, all by KO. And he was fighting a journeyman tonight. He was fighting a guy with a very poor losing record, but he boxed very nicely. This is a guy who boxes. He's built like an absolute tank. If you look at his physique, he looks like a bodybuilder. It's amazing. He's like heavyweight. I think he's very, very short. I think he's about 5'8", 5'9", which may turn out to be a problem for a guy who likes to fight behind a jab when he goes up to some of the guys at light heavyweight. Who are 6'3", 6'4", that sort of thing. But the guy has, real power. He absolutely poleaxed his opponent tonight. The guy was very knocked out. Let's put it that way. And he has some boxing skill as well. He's a really good guy to watch out for. Boy Jones Jr. He's a guy I've seen before. I've never been overly impressed with him before. I thought he put on a decent performance tonight. He looked like an English level Leo Santa Cruz actually. Very tall, very rangy at the weight. A good jab, but doesn't tend to use it. He's almost got that Mexican style in the sense that he likes to come forward. He likes to really put it on his opponents. Constant left, right hooks to the body. A guy who really sort of throws down and looks to have a huge punching output. And Boy Jones Jr. for me has a really, really impressive volume, and he can be a problem at super featherweight. He's so big at the weight, he can be a real problem in that division. I think what he's got to work on is, number one, he's got to grow older a bit and gain a bit of man strength, because he hit this guy with his opponent who looked 3 or 4 weight classes below him, and I mean that. He looked 3 or 4 weight classes below him, got hit with the kitchen sink tonight and didn't go down at any point. I think maybe as he grows a bit older, maybe a bit more man strength will assist with the power. I also think he needs to work behind his jab a bit more, because if you've got that physique at the weight, and you've got a decent jab, you're kind of wasting yourself if you're not employing it a bit more. So, you know, that was a credible performance from Boy Jones Jr. Even though it was against, you know, a journeyman with a horrific losing record, he showed himself to be an interesting fighter with huge punching output, and I do believe if he's taken slowly and developed in the right way, he's only 19, he could potentially be another fighter to get to sort of British level potentially. You know, we'll have to see how his career develops, but some really interesting prospects with Yard and Boy Jones Jr. Joe Pigford was another one, Southampton-based light middleweight, who I think is 10-0 now with 9 knockouts. And the best bit of his fight was the when the MC Mark Burgess said, "It's time to release the pig." I absolutely love that as an opening line. Time to release the pig. You know, that's going to stick with me. And sure enough, the pig was released and you know, won the fight by a first round KO. He's clearly very, very heavy-handed. You know, his opponent supposedly was very durable coming into the fight, and sure enough, the pig, you know, was absolutely dominant in there. So he's an interesting fighter. He looked a bit wild, a bit green, a bit rough around the edges. We'll have to see how that power translates as he steps up to more like English-British level. But he's another guy, you know, 10-0, and this is what I mean. There's a lot of these fighters on the Frank Warren stable who are fighting on these Box Nation cards who I haven't really seen much of before tonight. But the strength and depth is very much there, as I say. DP Carr, Daniel Carr, or Danny Carr, I think his name is, goes by DP Carr, went to 4-0 tonight. He fought a journeyman whose record was 1-53, who I think had only been stopped once in 53 losses. So clearly a guy who makes you look very awkward, but he was another guy who showed some decent fundamentals in there, and you know, potentially will look better as he fights a different type of opponent. So all in all, some, you know, really, really good card, really good card. For me, Conlan versus Nelson, as I say, Stonewall fight of the year. Ryan Walsh versus Liam Walsh, two guys who showed in British title fights tonight they really have the potential to excel and progress and become, you know, part of this Frank Warren band of world champions. For me, these guys are good in their respective weight classes, and they can be as good as a Liam Smith or a Terry Flanagan, especially Liam Walsh. You know, I really rate Liam Walsh, and Ryan Walsh, even if he's maybe not quite as good, he's certainly a European level fighter in my perspective. And you know, the prospects coming through, Anthony Yard, Boy Jones Jr., Joe Pigford, potentially these are guys to start seeing in minor title fights next year. You know, credit to Frank Warren. He's obviously got Billy Joe, he's got Flanagan, he's got Liam Smith, Liam Williams. You know, he's working with the Furies now. There's a lot of good fighters to come back into the mix as well. So a really, really, really good card. Conlan versus Nelson. Can't get better than that. Really enjoyed it tonight. If you've enjoyed this video, give me the thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel and let me know your thoughts on this card. Who caught your eye? Who are you most impressed by? Who are you most looking forward to see again? What matchups would you put these guys in with next time out? Do also check out my videos that I did separately on Vijinda Singh and on Hughie Fury and their fights tonight, and leave your comments there as well. But many thanks for watching, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the boxing as much as I have tonight. Cheers.